Hello there, I'm Mark Wolf, and welcome to 7 Mods to Consider for your next TerraFirmaCraft playthrough. It's a bit of a wordy title, but we're going to go with it. Today we're going to be looking at 7 mods and add-ons that are compatible with TerraFirmaCraft for Minecraft 1.20.1. All the links will be in the description. So, yeah, let's get started. And the first mod we're going to look at today is FirmaLife. FirmaLife is a mod that adds a lot of new elements to the game, including greenhouses, cellars for food preservation, a new stove type, which you can see behind me, and new food recipes and new ways to craft different food. All the changes are noted in the guide book, which you get by going to your inventory screen, clicking the book here, and FirmaLife has its own section. It is this brick block. And in here, it'll show you all the different changes and how they work. One of the first things you're going to notice is the change to bread. In TerraFirmaCraft, the way you craft bread is you put flour into your crafting grid along with water. That would make dough. With FirmaLife installed, it makes flatbread. In order to make bread that is leavened, you need to include yeast, which I'll cover in a minute, and a sugar substitute, whether that be honey or sugar. Sugar can be acquired from sugar cane, honey from bees, or by boiling beets in a pot with salt water. You get yeast by putting fruit, figs, pineapple chunks, berries, into a barrel with water, one piece of fruit for every 100 millibuckets, and sealing it. After 3 days, it'll become a yeast starter. The way you get more yeast is by feeding it any flour product. For every 1 bit of flour, you will get half a bucket worth of additional yeast, and it will take 12 hours once sealed for the flour to turn into yeast. So every time you bake another batch of bread, or at least make another batch of dough, you're going to want to feed at least 2 bits of flour into your yeast barrel to replenish the yeast you just removed. The next change is how you get cheese. You take a barrel of milk and you add rennet. This is what you get from animals such as cows and goats. Put that in the barrel and you seal it, and the milk will curdle. You need 1 rennet for every 2 buckets of milk, and it takes about 4 hours. It'll become curdled milk. Once the milk is curdled, you then need to add cheesecloth, which be crafted from wool or silk, to the barrel and sealed again. It will take 1 hour and turn the milk into curds. Once you have milk curds, you can now start crafting cheese. There are 2 types of cheese you can make in FirmaLife: soft cheeses and hard cheeses. Hard cheeses you make by putting your curds in your crafting grid and surrounding on either side with salt. And depending on the type of curds you use, you will make different sorts of hard cheeses. In this case, using regular milk or cow's milk, we make cheddar. You can also make soft cheeses by combining the curds in a barrel with salt water and sealing it, and after 16 hours, it will become, well, a soft cheese. In this case, cow's milk becomes Gouda. Stepping outside, we can now look at beehives, another thing added by FirmaLife that is not present in TerraFirmaCraft by default. Beehives will have 4 slots for bee frames. To make the hive, you need 2 frames, 6 boards, and a bit of thatch. And to make a frame, you need just 5 bits of lumber in an X pattern. Once you put the frames in a hive, you then need to surround it with flowers. The more flowers you use, the higher the chance of a queen moving into the frame. As you can see in the tooltip here, we have 15 flowers, which means you have a 1 in 65 chance of a new queen moving into a frame. If we add some more flowers, you'll see the chance goes up. Beehives can only detect flowers in a 5x5 radius around it. With 54 flowers, place 1 here. We're still at 54. Once a queen moves into the hive, it will have a higher chance of generating an additional bee. Bees will have different stats. Hardiness allows bees to produce honey at lower temperatures. Productivity improves the speed at which bees produce honey. Mutant increases the chance of traits being passed on. Fertility increases the likelihood of the bees breeding, and so on. When you have 2 frames of queens in them, they can breed to fill the next frame. That new queen would have traits based on its parent queens. In order to get beeswax, you need to take a knife to a bee frame and scrape it. This kills the queen and also angers the hive. So while you're breeding bees, you want to make sure you keep your best queens and scrape off the ones you don't want, because you will need the beeswax for further FirmaLife crafting recipes. To get honey, the frame will slowly fill up like it does in vanilla Minecraft, and you just click on it with a bottle. A beehive can store up to 12 lots of honey at once. You're going to need beeswax to make that, sealed bricks, and treated lumber. The treated lumber is used to make your first tier of greenhouses. And here we have all the different tiers. You have your wooden tier and a weathered version. You have your copper tiered and all the different versions of weathered copper, iron and rusted iron, and stainless steel. You have 4 tiers, and within each tier, these blocks are interchangeable. So you can have some weathered wood and some treated wood, or if you start with full copper, if some of it starts to oxidize, that will not negatively affect your greenhouse. However, you cannot mix and match copper with, say, iron. That will make your greenhouse invalid, and you will not be able to farm inside the greenhouse. If we jump into my greenhouse here, we have a number of different planters. Different planters allow for the growing of different crops. Your basic planter is your quad planter. This can be planted in any greenhouse, and while you have a wooden greenhouse, it is the only planter you can use. Quad planters can take most any vegetable. Once planted, it has a water requirement. You can feed that requirement by watering it with a watering can. The watering can you make with a bucket with water, and a piece of lumber. This watering bucket has no durability, but will use up the water within it, and so every 10 or so uses you will have to right click on a water source to refill the watering can. As the plants grow, they will use up the water in the planter, and you will have to water the plants again to keep them growing. If you stop watering them, they run out of water, their growth will freeze. They will not die or wither from lack of water, but they will not progress. The planters do have the different nutritions there: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. They do not affect the yield of the plants like they will in an open farm field. So you do not need to provide nutrients, although I believe the nutrients will accelerate their growth. Once you've built the actual frame of the greenhouse, you need to initiate it and turn it into a greenhouse. For this, you need your climate control station. Here, the station is lit up, and you can see in the tooltip it says expects treated wood greenhouse. If I break that and place a new one, okay, it lights up right away. Right clicking on it will give you the readout. Found a treated wood greenhouse of 108 blocks. That includes ground and air blocks. If the greenhouse is invalid for any reason, say we're missing that wall, the station will not be lit up. To craft a station, you need 4 planks, 2 redstone, 1 bit of blue glass, and 2 brass mechanisms. Once you think your greenhouse is complete, right-clicking on the station will light it up if it is valid. As I said, there are different tiers. Each planter is associated with a different tier. Quad planters can work in any greenhouse tier. Large planters only work in copper or better. Bonsai require iron or better, as does hanging and trellis. With the update to 1.20, we now have mechanical pumps and copper pipes and steel pipes. So FirmaLife has added a greenhouse port. This means you can pump water from a reservoir or river directly into your greenhouse, and by making a sprinkler, it will sprinkle the crops and water them so you don't have to walk through with a watering can all the time. The sprinkler is made on an anvil with a copper sheet, which brings us to the next new structure, and that is the cellar. Like the greenhouse, it requires a climate station. The cellar requires it to be made completely out of sealed bricks with a sealed door. Sealed bricks are made with any stone brick and beeswax, and you can chisel them to give them different textures if you want. It also requires a sealed door, which requires sealed bricks and brass rods, or a sealed trapdoor, which likewise requires sealed bricks and brass rods. Like the greenhouse, if the cellar is not valid, the climate station will not be lit up. Once you think the cellar is valid, right-clicking on the station will either confirm it or stay dark, meaning it is not yet valid. And to double check if it is valid, hovering over a food shelf will read, as you can see in the top, in a valid cellar. Food stored in a cellar will have a longer shelf life. So here we have some cherries. They have a 1 month and 6 day shelf life. In my inventory, they have a 5-day shelf life. Shelves are made with 6 planks and 3 lumber. Hangers are made with 3 planks and 2 string. You can put vegetables and meat on hangers, whereas you can put just about anything on a shelf. We also have jarbonets, which allow you to store jarred food. Jarbonets can store up to 6 jars of varying food types. Shelves can only store 1 food type at a time. For example, I cannot store apples on the same shelf as cherries. You can use additional storage inventories in a cellar, such as chests, vessels, and barrels. However, the food inside of these storage inventories do not receive the benefit of a cellar. A vessel will get the benefit of a vessel being sealed, but it will not get the cellar benefit on top of that. Likewise, a barrel with vinegar to store pickled vegetables will get the pickling bonus, but not the cellar bonus. And last, that brings us to ovens. Bottom ovens, top ovens, and behind this, we have chimneys. If you attach a chimney to the back of a bottom oven, all the smoke produced by the oven will go up the chimney and out the top. This way, the inside of your house does not fill up with smoke. An oven must be fully surrounded by insulating blocks for it to work. In this case, that's bricks. How I have this set up here, this is not insulated, and therefore, it will not light. Having 2 top ovens next to each other do insulate each other, and this will work. To cook with the oven, you just need to click logs into the bottom oven, where you can then light it, and you place your food in the top oven. It will cook, and once it's done cooking, you need to use a peel to pull it out of the oven. The peel is crafted with a bowl and any stick. In addition to the top oven, you can also place a wrought iron grill on top of a bottom oven, or a pot, and use that instead of a fire pit. You can also craft a vat, which is useful for bulk cooking, such as making olive water to make olive oil. If you are planning on jarring fruit, you can also make a jarring station, which you can place next to the vat, and when it is done cooking down the fruit, it will automatically fill any empty jars in the jarring station. Just to note, in order to close the vat, in order for it to start boiling, you do need to shift and right-click on the vat. A lid will appear, and it is now sealed. It will start to boil. As I mentioned, the vat does make it a lot easier to do things in bulk. I primarily use it to make olive water in order to make olive oil, so I can keep my lamps lit. However, you can also do vegetables in it, and most boiled recipes, not including soups, but you can make dyes in the vat as well as making sugar water and salt water. FirmaLife does include a number of new food items. You can take a loaf of bread and cut it into slices, which can be used as in sandwiches. You can make chocolate, tortillas, and tacos. You can make tomato sauce, salsa. These different items are, of course, used in different food recipes. We have ice cream, burritos, pizzas. Pizzas are a very interesting food item. They can accept all food groups: dairy, vegetables, grain from the pizza dough, but it can also take fruit and meat, meaning that a pizza can meet all 5 nutrition needs in one recipe. However, pizza is a bit of a pain to make. It requires olive oil, a lot of it. That's enough olive oil to fill up 4 lamps and keep them lit for about 3 months in game. In addition to salt, basil, and dough. You can also make pies using a pie pan, which is made from a cast iron sheet on an anvil. There is also some beekeeping clothing you can make for yourself that will protect you when working with your beehives, since, as I mentioned, pulling frames out of a hive can anger the bees if done during the day. Done at night, the bees will stay in their hive and they will sting you. They do not do a lot of damage. There is no poison effect. There is no risk of an allergic reaction, but if you don't want to deal with it, you can make yourself some beekeeping clothing. FirmaLife does introduce one new mineral to the game, and that is chromite, which can be used to craft chromium, which is required for stainless steel. In addition to new food items, we can also make drying mats using fruit leaves. These drop off of fruit trees, and a solar dryer, which allows it to dry even in the rain, whereas a drying mat, because it's open, rain will reset the progress. With a drying mat, you can dry fruits, vegetables, dirt, but you can also make tofu. You make tofu by boiling soybeans in salt water in a vat or a pot. The vat allows you to do it in bulk. This makes a soy mixture. The soy mixture you set on a mat to make tofu, and tofu is, of course, a protein alternative, usable in all TerraFirmaCraft and FirmaLife recipes that call for meat. You also need to make a mixing bowl and a spoon in order to make certain recipes. The pizza dough I mentioned earlier requires a mixing bowl, and that's FirmaLife. It's definitely a mod I recommend pretty much always when I play TerraFirmaCraft. If you're getting into TerraFirmaCraft for the first time, you might not want to because it does add a lot of additional features. However, it is one of my favorite mods to add. I always recommend it. Sticking with the food theme, next we have Farmer's Delight for TerraFirmaCraft. If you're using a mod loader and install Farmer's Delight for TFC, it should automatically download the correct version of Farmer's Delight as well. If it doesn't, you're going to have to add that yourself. Just make sure you use the correct mod version. As you might expect, Farmer's Delight for TFC does make most of the food items from Farmer's Delight compatible with TerraFirmaCraft. To do so, it does add the TerraFirmaCraft nutrition to most of the food items. I'm seeing here pumpkin doesn't have any nutrition, but eggs, cabbage, although TerraFirmaCraft has its own cabbage, tomato sauce, pasta, you get the idea. Any Farmer's Delight food that requires a knife and the cutting board here, such as chicken, can use any TerraFirmaCraft knife to get the cut food items. This includes raw bacon, the minced beef, and I believe fish as well. Yep, fish as well. So you can put any of those onto a cutting board and use any TerraFirmaCraft knife to get your cuts. And in order to get canvas for any of these canvas signs that you might want to make, you could just use straw, which if you're familiar with TerraFirmaCraft, you can get just by cutting grass. Next, we have the Farmer's Delight stove. The stove does require a wrought iron grill, which is crafted from a double iron sheet. So that's 4 ingots of iron. But you also need a magma block. These are a little more difficult to get in TerraFirmaCraft. You'll have to find a volcano, or I think they can rarely spawn underground at the lava level. There is no crafting recipe for magma blocks in TerraFirmaCraft. Quick addendum, the cookpot from Farmer's Delight does work with the bottom oven from FirmaLife and the fire pit from TerraFirmaCraft. These do require fuel sources, whereas the Farmer's Delight stove does not, but I think that's a bit more balanced. If you want to craft the cooking pot, it does require a bucket, and this is showing a lot of different fluids. So let's just look at the recipe quickly. You need 2 wrought iron sheets, 2 bricks, a pot, and you need a bucket with something in it. An empty bucket doesn't work. However, a bucket with water does. You can use water, salt water, mead. Regular water is probably just going to be your easiest choice. And of course, the skillet, which will allow you to craft most campfire foods, is craftable with just a double wrought iron sheet and a brick. Which brings us to the actual food items. Many of the recipes can be crafted straight in your crafting grid, such as your roasted mutton chops here, which does give you the nourishment buff, as well as all of your food groups from TerraFirmaCraft, your grains, your vegetables, your proteins. The nourishment buff appears to be unchanged from vanilla. So as long as you have the nourishment buff, your saturation should not decrease. Other recipes do require the use of the cook pot. Be aware, you have to use wooden bowls for all of these recipes. You cannot use ceramic bowls from TerraFirmaCraft. Likewise, any of these meals that you can get require a wooden bowl. You cannot use a ceramic bowl to collect any of these servings, nor can you use a ceramic bowl to craft any of these servings. Now, some of these recipes do require mushrooms, vanilla Minecraft mushrooms. They are not available in TerraFirmaCraft, and so recipes like the stuffed pumpkin, mushroom pie, vegetable noodles cannot be crafted in TerraFirmaCraft. And I should note that all cuts of meat that you can get from Farmer's Delight work in pretty much all TerraFirmaCraft and FirmaLife recipes. And as you can see here, the raw lasagna from FirmaLife does take the cooked chicken cuts. This is true for mutton cuts, fish cuts, and even bacon. And so if you're looking for a few more food items in addition to what FirmaLife offers, feel free to download Farmer's Delight for TFC. And now that we've got our hunger satisfied, how about we move on to our thirst? Of course, I'm talking about the Water Flasks mod. The Water Flasks mod adds 2 new water flasks, or, well, ways to carry water or other fluids. You have the leather water flask and the iron water flask. The ceramic jug, which is in base TerraFirmaCraft, holds 100 millibuckets of water, so 1/10 of a bucket. The leather flask can hold up to 500, and the iron flask can hold 2,000 millibuckets, which is the equivalent of 2 buckets. You compare that to the new glass bottles introduced in 1.20 of TerraFirmaCraft. The silica glass can only hold 500 millibuckets. So the leather flask offers you a way to make a portable water source to meet your hydration needs that won't break as much as a ceramic jug and is easier to craft up than, say, a glass bottle. The leather flask does require leather, which does mean you have to tan hide, soak it, and scrape into leather. And then once you've actually crafted the leather using this recipe here for the napping, you can then craft a leather flask. Flask is pretty easy. You need 2 bits of leather, 2 bits of string, and a bladder. And a bladder you can get from most large animals: cows, sheep, pigs, horses. And that's going to be required if you ever have to repair your flask, because these water flasks do have a durability limit. The leather flask is, I believe, 100 uses, whereas the iron flask is somewhere close to 1,000. To make the iron flask, you're of course going to need a unfinished iron flask, which is craftable on an anvil with a sheet of iron, raw iron, 2 more bits of leather flask sides, 2 bits of burlap, another bladder, a bit of string. Likewise, after it breaks, you can repair it with another bladder and another bit of burlap. These flasks, as I mentioned earlier, can be used to hold other fluids. Doesn't just need to be water. You can have milk in it. You could have mead, cider, most drinkable fluids in TerraFirmaCraft, which would technically include salt water, though I would not recommend drinking that. And next is ArborFirmaCraft. This adds 10 new wood types, 22 new trees using these wood types, and an additional 30 new trees based on TerraFirmaCraft wood types. As you can tell, these wood types are based on vanilla wood types. So while this says Balboa, it is acacia wood from vanilla Minecraft. This one is eucalyptus, but it is birch. Fig is cherry. And so this gives you the option of using some vanilla wood types in TerraFirmaCraft, since I believe oak is the only vanilla wood type that is actually oak. Hickory is dark oak. I think Copic is jungle. Might be 1 or 2 others that are perfect conversions over from vanilla. But yeah, so this gives you the different options to craft with, and then, as you can see, you can craft all the different TerraFirmaCraft based items using these wood types. This includes items such as the encased axles, the bladed axles, the water wheels, all of which were introduced in TerraFirmaCraft 1.20.1. And if we go for a little bit of a flight, I can show you some of the new trees as well. So here we have a sequoia tree from TerraFirmaCraft, but it has coastal redwood leaves. Different sort of leaves, so this is a coastal redwood tree. If we fly over to this one over here, so again, it's sequoia logs, but this is an ancient sequoia tree and is an ancient giant redwood. And so almost all of the trees from TerraFirmaCraft with ArborFirmaCraft now have additional variants, including different leaves and different names. While it doesn't change how the wood works. The hickory still looks like TerraFirmaCraft hickory. The sequoia is still TerraFirmaCraft sequoia. It does give you a little more variety in how your forests generate, the trees you'll find in your forests, and how the world looks. Because this looks pretty awesome. Additionally, ArborFirmaCraft adds a tree tap, which allows you to tap trees for their sap. This includes birch and maple sap, which you can then process down into syrup, which you can then turn into sugar. Both maple sugar and birch sugar, which are usable as a sugar substitute in all recipes that call for sugar. Additionally, you can tap rubber trees to get latex, which you can then process into rubber bars, which are usable to craft sealed bricks from FirmaLife. Next, we have Astikor Carts. As you can see, we have 3 carts behind us. A plow, a supply cart, and an animal cart. The animal cart is crafted with 5 lumber, a brass mechanism, and any stick in addition to 2 wheels. The wheels are crafted with 8 sticks and a bit of lumber. The animal cart allows you to, well, place animals into the cart. I have a quail around here somewhere. Let's see if I can't find him. Oh, there we go. He's on a... thought I left him on a lead. So we bring him over towards our animal cart, which is this one. We can, pressing R, so we are now pulling the cart. Pulled over him. And now he's in the cart. If you want to remove him from the cart, use shift and right click and it will release him. The cart does kind of work like a minecart or boat in vanilla Minecraft for picking up animals, but I've noticed the easiest way to do it is just to start pulling it and pull over the animal. It can hold up to 2 animals at a time. Next, we have the supply cart. Shift right click will open its inventory. As you see, it has 57 inventory slots, which is the equivalent of 3 TerraFirmaCraft chests. Unlike TerraFirmaCraft chests, the supply cart can carry very large items, such as logs and doors. It cannot carry huge items like this acacia barrel. And the contents do render on the cart. In addition, if you're playing multiplayer, you can right-click on it, and you can ride in the cart. I believe... yes, you can also ride in the animal cart. And next we have the plow. So by right-clicking it, you raise and lower the arms of the plow. By shift right-clicking it, you open the inventory. Once open, you can equip it with, in this case I'm going to do hose. You can also equip knives and axes, although I have not seen them working. The description does say that you can clear out debris like stones. In my testing, that has not worked. But you lower the arms, you press R to pull, and then you pull the cart. If we look behind us, we're plowing the land as we travel. Oh look, it actually did knock off one of the rocks. So maybe I was just being unlucky with my testing earlier. Well, this gives you the ability to plow large swaths of land pretty easily. It should also be noted that you can pull all these carts with animals, such as your horses, your donkeys, and your mules. Just go up to the cart, while hovering over it, press R, and now it's hitched to your animal. You can get off, and the animal will stay attached to the cart, and the animal does not move while it is hitched to the cart. But then you can move, and it will pull the cart along behind it, allowing you to till land fairly quickly. To remove your animal from being hitched to it, you do have to be on the animal. Point again at the cart, press R. So this means that in your world, you can, hitch your horse or mule up to a cart, go travel a long distance away to go to a nice large forest, chop down all the trees to your heart's content, and then ride back to your camp, pulling, well, everything that you would not have normally been able to carry because your inventory was full. Another quick note on the supply cart is the heavier the items you have in it, the more effort it's going to take for you to pull it, meaning you'll get exhausted, use your hunger faster. using a animal, such as a horse, to pull it will negate these effects. If you're a veteran of TerraFirmaCraft, you might remember back in version 1.7, you could chisel any block, well, more than you can currently. Right now I can turn this into a smooth stone, or maybe a stair, or maybe a slab. But that's about it with the chisel and hammer. Well, there is now Chisels Bits TFC, allowing you to use chisel and bits in TerraFirmaCraft. Stone chisel can be made from knapping. The iron one can be made from an raw iron rod. Gold one from a gold rod. Diamond one is a raw iron rod with some diamond powder, which you can get from grinding a diamond in a quern, and some flux. And they have a netherite option here, but you can't make netherite in TerraFirmaCraft. So that's not truly an option, but you can make a diamond one. So you can take your diamond chisel and your chisel bit bag, which is a knapping recipe for leather. Pretty simple. And you can start chiseling blocks. You can also make patterns by making a quill, which is a feather, black dye, and yellow dye, and writing on a piece of paper with the quill, like that. And then you'll be able to make a, well, copy of the block that you chiseled. So if we go up to, let's say this one here, you notice there's that little red square on it. And we can chisel out individual blocks with that. And if you hold down Shift and the scroll wheel, you can cycle between different chiseling options. So if you look here, we have it set to a single bit right now, and left clicking will chip away one bit at a time. If we Shift scroll wheel down, we now can do a small cube, which is a 2x2. And if we scroll down, we can continue changing the shape. 1x4 sphere, extrude entire plane, so we can take off one full layer at a time. Extrude a 2x2, so I'll be taking 2 layers off at a time. And so on and so forth. All the bits go directly into your chisel bag. We are not in survival, so they're not going in right away. But as long as you have bits in your bag, you can then pull out the bits and start adding them back. And as you use them, they will refill automatically from your chisel bag. Again, we're in creative, so it's not actually changing the numbers in the bag, but you get the idea. So this way you can, well, make custom items. So how about we give me a minute and I'll try to craft something for you. And there we go. Now we have a little bit of a counter with wood face and andesite top. And something I learned while doing this is if you have your bits selected, you can Shift and scroll wheel to change what sort of shape you want to use. So if I want to put a circle on top here, I can. As you notice, that's actually a completely different block. You can interact with multiple blocks at once. It's overlapping with that one, this one, and that one. And the chisel can do the same thing. So if we change this to be a square, I can take a chunk out of 2 blocks at once. And if you're unsure if the block that you want to work on is compatible with chisel, you make a magnifying glass, which is any stained glass, plus the chisel, plus a stick. And when you highlight over it, it'll tell you whether it supports chiseling or not. So all these full blocks can be chiseled. The stair and the slab cannot. The wall can. Chest can't. Crafting grid can. However, I am fairly certain if I take a chunk out of this, it will no longer work as a crafting table. Yep. So you can use it for decoration. Maybe you want the top to look like a crafting table, but not actually be usable. I don't know why you'd want a non-usable crafting table, but, you know, there are options. You can do that. Be aware, though. It says you can chisel the FirmaLife greenhouse, and I imagine it would say the same for the cellar. Yes, it says these blocks are chiselable. chiselable. Boy, that's not a word you say often. However, if you do, the greenhouse will no longer count as a greenhouse. So, yeah, don't do that. You're just going to ruin your greenhouse. And the final mod for today is not actually a mod. It is a add-on. And you've probably noticed it throughout this video, and that is, of course, the Vexxed Visuals. It is a resource pack add-on that changes most of the textures in TerraFirmaCraft and FirmaLife and a couple other mods. I love it and use it in just about every playthrough of TerraFirmaCraft. And so I'll show you a few side-by-sides so you can see the difference between Vexxed and vanilla TerraFirmaCraft. So there are 7 mods and add-ons to consider for your next playthrough of TerraFirmaCraft for Minecraft 1.20. Stay tuned for part 2, because I do have more mods I want to showcase, and well, if I showcase them all in one video, this would be an hour plus long, and you don't want to listen to me talk for that long. And that'll be out in a few weeks. Until then, thank you for joining me today. I hope you've had a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Later.